is considerable. In fact, there's unending debate around these designations by Taylor and by Bombara. Do you agree with them? All these brandings that are very provocative and suggestive of a level of political awareness and sophistication and commitment. Was that the tenor of the mood in your group?
Well, it was in a sense. We were constantly asking ourselves and challenging each other about what is a black film, you know. We had discussions way into that. That was one of the good things about UCLA, because the campus was open virtually all 24 hours, at least the film department was. And we were, I mean, in many times really violent discussions about what we should be doing as filmmakers, or potential filmmakers. But we never thought of ourselves beyond just that small group, you know. We never thought of a place in history or anything like that. We were just trying to survive. We were just trying to survive. We knew that after school, after, you know, you did your MFA, whatever it is, what was going to be out there? Nothing. If we didn't start trying to form some sort of organization and try to aid one another after, you know. And because at the time there wasn't, like Sundance or anything. There wasn't any sort of distribution of independent film as such. They had like educational film, like Churchill Films, I think it was, and maybe there was a company in San Francisco. I think Clyde Taylor was associated with, because he knew the Uni Films, and there was some brothers who were running. I mean, actual brothers, you know, who were actually head of the thing. I can't think of the name of it, and they were the only ones. And there wasn't, like I mentioned, there wasn't a Sundance, there wasn't any means to get into Hollywood, unless you had cousins that worked there or something like that. You weren't getting in, you know. And I started off wanting to be a cameraman, even though I knew that you had to wait 15 years just to, you know, work your way up, just to become a loader and a first camera assistant, things like that. But we were prepared for that.
So is it fair to say that it's a accurate description in hindsight?
Well, the thing that we have problems with is the name of El Rebellion or whatever else. You know, we never thought of that, you know, in a sense. But I know there's arguments about it now, you know.
And there will be next week.
Yeah, and
in LA.
Yes. And so, like Hanley, I think, I don't want to speak for him, but I think because he just spoke the other day at that event.
Haile Gerima?
Yeah. And he was sort of hesitant about calling it an LA Rebellion, you know. Because I don't feel that we have really accomplished what we thought we were going to do, or should have done, and we missed an opportunity because of that. And so I have these feelings about that because of that.
Were you guys, were the group of men and women filmmakers at UCLA in conversation with your counterparts in New York City? The Stan Lathans, the St. Clair Bonds, Greaves is a little early, a generation, or half a generation early. Were you in conversation with them during this period?
No, not really. St. Clair Bourne was different because I think he came toward the end and taught at UCLA or something or another, and that was the only connection. The others, no. There was there's a lady that in New York who had a little screening room in her basement apartment, and I'm trying to think of her name. Who was the other connection we had. But other than that, no, it wasn't until much later that people like Art Hesselink from Amsterdam and Catherine Ralph from France and Louis Greger from Berlin, who were looking for independent films. And I think it was because of them that connection between New York and LA and all the rest of the filmmakers around the country started to, exist, and we became very much aware of each other. But I also remember too that there was Pearl Bowser and Oliver Franklin also, which made it possible for that connection to happen.
What about in Chicago with the Black Arts Movement? Larry Neal is trying to make films, experimenting. Were you in conversation with that group?
After.
After.
Yeah. That came after, I don't know exactly what year it was, sometime in the 80s or something, late 80s or something. But it was only after, for me and people like Hailey and things like that, we had already left school by that time that became a parent. And the later filmmakers had that relationship more than we did.
Okay. Let's turn to your film practice. Are there working principles of storytelling that you adhere to?
For me, it's like trying to represent people in a true fashion, in a way, in a respectful way, because I think a lot of our concerns when we were going to UCLA was this failure for Hollywood to see us as real people. And so we always had that urge to try, even if it's a comedy or whatever it is, a surreal or whatever it is, was to show a different narrative, yeah, to try to share in our experiences and things like that, basically.
Are there aesthetic principles and considerations also that are featured, are part of your toolkit?
We always had a debate about what is black aesthetics and things like that. We never really resolved those things. So I'm always hesitant to talk about and how, because how it applies to me in a sense. I just know that there are stories that I like to tell, and it comes from, I guess just being around an environment where, and that I come from Mississippi, and there was a lot of storytelling. I mean, the area I lived in, everyone was from Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, all those different southern states, and there was this sense of a community and people telling stories about the place they left, about home. So, and one of the things, because of that, that part, the South has always been like a mystery to me. It's always been something that dealt with memory in the past, and I was always excited about it because these storytellers made it seem like it was this magical place on one hand, but yet still there was this other side to it, which they didn't want to go back to. Like my mother said she'd never go back to Mississippi, and she gave me reasons why and things like that. And so you had this sort of dual kind of mixed feeling about it, but part of it was magical, and I always wanted to capture that sort of storytelling element about it.
Are there particulars that stand out in the telling of the story?
It was trying to give these people voice, in a sense, and because I thought the world that they created needed to be, shared, and I didn't see it on television or the movies and things like that. And so there was this really strong urge, and it was among all of us, and the students to tell our stories.
Okay, you said in a publication, and I don't remember which one, that the organizing motif of your films is, and I quote here, the power to endure. What do you mean by that?
Well, the people I grew up with worked, and worked, and they complained whatever, but still it was a sense that they didn't give up. Like the South, they moved here. We survived, and you look over it. It was all about survival. I would be here today if of some distant relative that jumped over the boat, you know, or something like that, between the middle passage or something like that. I mean, I look at, you know, those pictures of those slave boats, and, you know, and I'm claustrophobic to a certain extent, and I couldn't see myself, you know, lying in chains like that and on top of each other like that, you know, and just that alone, you know, I pay homage and tribute, all, you know, because I don't think I can endure that. But the fact of the matter is it's people I lived with, you know, that they held their family together, you know, they were church going and things like that, you know, they provided and they shared whatever they had with other people who didn't have. And so I really admired that, and I wanted to a winning lesson, that's the one thing I wanted to sort of share with everybody, is that these people were real human beings, and they worked in spite of the harshness, but, you know,